The following is unedited audio stolen from deep inside a political conspiracy that documents an ongoing effort to assassinate the character and take down the potential political hopes and dreams of a Democratic politician. The audio has not been edited in any way. What you're about to hear is real and a real political conspiracy.
Okay, so guys, obviously this Beto guy, he's a problem.
Yeah, we got to clap this fool. Has to happen.
Go.
I mean, no one's ever planned for a German guy who pretends to be Mexican. It's actually kind of the smartest strategy.
I keep hearing more about 2020. This guy's young. He's attractive. He's charismatic. He stands for everything that's right and good. He represents, I mean, even though he's white, he represents the interests of POC in a way that, quite frankly, I'm not with.
No way. I mean, he could possibly inspire the entire country to come together and defeat Donald Trump, which that goes in the way of our insane socialist accelerationist plans.
I've personally bought 3 condos in Trump Tower to accelerate conditions.
You know, worst of all, he's out here making women's calves cramp all over the place. He's setting up expectations about being a generous, giving lover. We can't have that.
No.
Can't have that.
We have spent years now setting women's standards very low for what to expect from bearded brocialists. And we're not going to have this guy filling their heads with dreams of multiple orgasms and fancy dinners out.
I heard that Beto O'Rourke can achieve triple-digit orgasms.
This has to
Did
be
you guys
stopped.
know that?
No. Yeah, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to know about it.
Not going to happen.
There's only one thing we need to do, and that's coordinate a response.
Absolutely.
So let's get our agent in the Washington Post on the line.
Yeah, let's get one of our shooters on
Let's
here.
get one of
Fred Hyatt.
Let's get one of our top shooters on this case. Put out the hit on Beto
Yeah, we're
right
putting
now.
a stack on Beto right
I'm putting
now.
stacks on his head, calling up one of our top shooters. Boop, 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 boop. Is this Liz Bernick of the Washington Post?
Yeah, hey, is this about taking Beto down?
Yeah, welcome to the political conspiracy.
Hey, thanks so much. Yeah, I met up with Bernie in a parking lot last week to talk about this at around 3 a.m. And his feeling was that it was just too likely that Beto could beat Trump, and we can't let that happen.
Can't let it happen, folks.
Bernie, he met you in the darkened parking lot as you do in Washington, and he said, follow the triple-digit orgasms. Follow wherever calves are cramping.
I wasn't going to let a champion for women win last time, and I'm not going to let a champion for women win this time. And so he deployed his A-team, including me and David Sirota with a couple tweets and Zed Jelani in Current Affairs.
It's wild that we can coordinate so well in that people among us who generally share the same political values and ideas could come up that quickly with such a similar take on why Beto is wanting. Again, and I'm glad I orchestrated all of this because we need coordinated response, character assassination.
The reality is he's such a great left candidate that everybody on the left was actually supporting him before Bernie decided to put the hit squad together. So, it definitely took a high level of coordination. It's pretty impressive. I know that Bernie has deployed every listserv. He's held multiple meetings in undisclosed locations. You can look for more critical reporting about Beto, especially as he starts to put together an exploration committee and prepare to run. And of course, none of that is going to be generated naturally by the news process. It's going to be all due to Bernie's work behind the scenes. And I know you guys are in on that.
I mean, I hope the Slack doesn't leak. We are recording this political conspiracy just for our own files, but I hope it never gets out.
Oh, man, we would be in so much trouble.
That would be embarrassing. I
would get canned.
But, I mean, just, for our own records and files, here, and for our tape, it's so we can plot out this conspiracy going forward. Just what is the sort of case against Beto? Because obviously, we have said on the show as part of this plan, again, as part of this double-blind conspiracy backtracking maneuver, that we very much wanted him to defeat Ted Cruz for the Texas Senate seat. He didn't do that, but now people are beginning to say, hey, Beto is, he's going to be our guy in 2020. He's young, he's charismatic, he's got money, people like him. So just, for our own records and purposes, even though I know we both
we gotta get the talking points down here.
What is the sort of case against Beto as a 2020 Democratic presidential nominee, in your opinion?
Well, the problem with Beto that, when Bernie gave me his files, seemed to be that he's very wishy-washy on healthcare, right? So he doesn't support either a Medicare for All bill in Congress. He's voiced support for single payer, but he won't put a policy to that. And he's also at other times said he supports universal coverage, but thinks there are a number of ways that we could get there, including something like a public option. So it's difficult to pin down actually exactly where he is. And that appears to be done on purpose, right? So he can kind of pull an Obama and be all things to all people. And then there's the kind of middling voting record in Congress, right? He's not a progressive Democrat. He's part of the New Democrat coalition. Didn't really do much in Congress, and doesn't really actually seem to push much legislation whatsoever. Needless to say, progressive legislation. And then there's all the real estate dealings in El Paso, where he's from, some of which have put poor old women out of their homes. So that's what we're working with, and we're trying to dig up more. We're talking to the tweeters who are talking about the calf cramping and see what they have, and they may know something we don't.
And it was reported that he just had a meeting with Obama's old campaign people. So like they clearly see something in him that they saw in Obama, and which is honestly should frighten everyone.
Oh my God! And it's astounding. They're out in the open about it. They're talking about how excited they are to have another Obama, and it's like, what do you think happened? He's like, Obama won, and he got 8 years in. Congratulations. And I guess they're just thinking we just want to win again. And it's just I guess that's what happens when you're out of power. Your brain just dissolves because of all of the triggering you're getting from all of every awful tweet and just President Cheeto being an embarrassment every day. But you have to do something once you win, and just being vague and offering platitudes and then governing that way. Guess what? Congratulations. Maybe Beto can beat Trump, especially if he has another well-timed economic collapse, which certainly helped Obama win. Then in 48 years, congratulations and welcome President Anti-Semitic Times Square Elmo, because that's the inevitable result of that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think there's some value in continuing to live the exact same cycle of our existence in 12-year cycles every year, but they keep getting worse, they keep getting shittier, and then we just die.
It's a Mayan calendar.
I think there's some value in that, in just reliving the same things, just with more like little marginal factors made shittier every time. Like, we get to relive 2008, but climate catastrophe is, I honestly think there's some value to it. And I think you guys are sort of just out of hand poo-pooing the idea of a living purgatory with no end.
Hey,
and I'm with it, boys.
Nietzsche, baby, eternal recurrence. Let's go.
Well, I mean, Liz, obviously, we're joking about this political conspiracy, but you wrote a piece for the Washington Post that was, a very mild piece of, criticism about Beto as a 2020 candidate that was just basically saying, here, pump the brakes on this guy for X, Y, and Z. Could you describe a little bit of the reaction this piece got and what you think that portends?
Yeah, I mean, so, my feeling was after one of my colleagues at the Post reported that Beto was hanging out with Obama at his post-presidential offices in Foggy Bottom here in D.C., that, the Democrats were getting pretty serious about Beto as a candidate. My feeling was, it feels like we only go backwards. We're just picking candidates who are, uncommitted to progressive values or in that new Democrat coalition zone. And, of course, I have different politics than that. And so my argument was look, if you're someone who cares about progressive priorities, if you feel like the Democratic Party has an opportunity here, which I do, to actually go to the left on some important issues, especially poll really well nationally, like single payer, then Beto's probably not your guy, because it isn't as though he comes from a conservative district, right? He comes from a district, El Paso, Texas 16, that I think is 17 points more Democratic than the average district in the United States. So he has the opportunity to be as progressive as he wants, essentially, in Congress, and he hasn't done it. So my assumption is that's just not his politics. And so I wrote that piece, and then people said, specifically Neera Tanden of CAP, who is acquainted with my husband, she said, this is a coordinated attack that's coming from, Bernie Sanders supporters, Bernie land. And then after, she made that claim, lots of other people on Twitter sort of echoed it. And I ended up talking to my boss about it and saying, no, I'm an independent writer. I'm not taking orders from anyone. I didn't meet up with Bernie in a parking lot and take a box of files and get to work. I just, this is my personal feeling on him, but I think that the reaction what is a very gentle critique a couple years out from the general was pretty telling about where the Democratic powers that be are on Beto.
That's amazing that they fucking made you go out to the pumpkin patch to find the microfilm with the instructions from Bernie on it. That's amazing.
Well, I mean, I think what's telling here is it's not so much that like everybody loves Beto or wants to rally around Beto, although I assume some of it is people are legitimately excited about him because he does sort of seem like feeling like white Obama. But I think it really speaks more to the fact, as far as people like Nira and the Democratic Party liberal establishment goes, is they want anyone but Bernie, right? It's Bernie is really what they're afraid of, because I think they know that, like, they can read a fucking poll. They know how popular he is. And quite honestly, I know this is, we're years off. He might not even run. Shit, I mean, he's old as hell. I mean, it does seem to be like he's considering running. And I really think, as if it were held today, like it's his nomination to lose. And I think, like, if you want to talk about coordinated attacks, I think they are coordinating all their energy to make sure that doesn't happen. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a conspiracy. They don't share his politics and they don't want to see the Democratic Party go in that direction politically.
Right.
So
precisely. I think that they recognize that a big part of Hillary Clinton's problem in 2016 was she was never able to get the cool factor going, which is no small thing because it allows you to get the youth vote out and it allows you to get sustained attention. Obama was able to both be a centrist and be cool. Clinton was not able to do that. In Beto, they see someone who can make, sort of centrist, bland Democratic policies cool. And so, when the left comes along and preemptively rejects this guy they're setting up as like the youth candidate who's going to pull all of Bernie's support, basically, they get really frustrated. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable response to your political plans taking a little bit of a hit. But I mean, I also think it's important for the left to understand, this guy just doesn't share your politics.
Well, they don't think of it. That's what's so amazing watching the responses. They have this weird sense that no one should be criticized, no candidate should be criticized at all, that you just sort of have to let all of these campaigns wash over your totally smooth marble-like brain, and then, I don't know, pick one out of a hat, or whoever calls your house the most, or whoever you shook hands with at a fucking flapjack dinner or something. There's no sense that you're supposed to come to this decision with a actual, political beliefs or policy sort of red lines, and that you're going to judge candidates based on whether they meet your criteria. They don't think of it that way. It's just an extended marketing campaign, and they bring it out the new hot product, which is this cool white guy, but he sounds like he might be Mexican, and we're not going to tell you he isn't. And what's not to like about that? Because as you said, like slapping a cool coat onto centrism is really all they have, because the policies sure as shit aren't going to fucking excite anybody.
Well, I think they're like the new strategy, getting me sick of the posts. 18 months before they need to. Mission accomplished. Just stop it. Stop posting. Everyone go back to talking about This Is Us. Just fucking nominate Chris Dodd. I don't care. Just do it. Be done. Stop it. I don't want to see it.
Well, Liz, I noticed a big thing in the reaction to your thing, and this idea that this is all being coordinated. Let's grant for a second that it is, that Bernie is like, I want Beto dead. I want his family dead. I want his skateboard broken in half. But the idea is like, the reaction you've gotten to this is like, oh, you're just trying to take him down. Why won't you support the Democrat or whatever? And like the answer is, it's just like they have to compete in a primary to be the Democratic nominee, and then invariably we're all guilted into supporting when he runs against Trump. But like, he hasn't got there yet, and until he does, it's very much an open contest.
Right. I mean, one way you could interpret criticisms from the left is, offering Beto the opportunity to pick up the policies that we care about. But the Democratic sort of centrist response was, how dare you expect him to alter his policies in any way or try to reach a voting base? And I mean, that's just how primaries work, right? We put our priorities out there. Candidates can decide if they want to respond or not. It's not necessarily a destructive attack to communicate in the press. This is what a certain base cares about. But I think again the response tells you he's not going to pick that shit up, and the Democrats who are supporting him do not want him to.
And I think
Right? They're comfortable with him where he is.
And like before Beto, it was like all Kamala Harris because like I guess she's kind of young and cool too, kind of both of those things.
She's
but like
probably the coolest person I've ever seen in my life. Dude, I've seen Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy. I know, cool.
But like it does seem like Beto is in a lot of ways for instance the people who work at CAP the perfect candidate because for some inexplicable reason people think he's attractive and he has a skateboard and was in a punk band, and I guess like like we said with Obama, he can sell that vague sense that like he's everything Trump isn't, and it's just like we can pour into him. He's just this container with which we can the youth of America can pour into their hopes for a better future because he sort of like looks and sounds like one of us. But again, as you pointed out, like it's very, very, very important, not just for the future of America and the rest of the world, but the future of like, let's say a Democrat winning the White House or being politically successful, that the nominee not be someone who is cozy with Wall Street, is willing to turn health insurance over to private markets and insurance companies, and is not going to basically let the Pentagon and military industrial complex run foreign policy. And Beto has shown no indication that he's willing to fight or push back on any of these issues. That he'd get in there and be what Obama was, which was someone who immediately bailed out Wall Street, started droning the entire world, and created this convoluted compromise that was in health insurance or healthcare that was based on the Heritage Foundation's original, sort of private-public partnership bullshit.
Yeah, and was politically weak and was shredded. And the only part of it that worked well and that remains are the Medicaid expansions, right? So I mean, it all seems like we've been here before, and I don't know. I mean, I hope that I don't think it's too out of order. To say that we've gone down this road and it didn't work.
I mean, there would be a silver lining if he got in there. You could see all of the Teacots calling him Beta O'Dork. That's pretty good. They could call him the Bay Dungler.
Oh, okay. How about this? Beto O'Rourke was in a punk band, right?
Yeah.
You got to figure for like the entirety of the '80s, he had a name like Jerry Piss, Jonathan Shit, Craig Vomit, classic punk
Steve
name.
Puss.
Yeah, that's not, and he's going up against a respectable a guy who was doing business deals in the '80s, who presumably Donald Trump never like signed a loan or anything under the name, Donald Pussy or something.
Tommy Scabies.
Yeah, Tommy Scabies, Rick Rabies, any of those, and that's it's a problem. Sorry, we got to get him out of here.
Liz, the other big thing that you hear a lot from like the Beto people or like the Cap mafia, was it Daily Kos just said this? He was like like Bernie supporters, like that's just a cult of personality, and like I don't know if this is projection or what. Like I mean, obviously, I against my better judgment, I find Bernie to be sort of a charming character, but like I wouldn't say he's someone that's like overburdened with like a charismatic leader like presence. Would you say?
No, I think it's like an anti-cult of personality where people who support Bernie appreciate the fact that he's sort of unpolished and shows up with like wrinkled suits, kind of like he napped in the car on the way, because it bespeaks a lack of. It bespeaks authenticity, right? He seems to, and he has the record to prove he actually gives a shit about the policies he's behind, and he doesn't seem like a workshopped kind of focus grouped figure. And so it's actually a cult of him not cultivating a sort of public persona in the way that a lot of candidates do.
Because that's what allows the policies to be the leading thing. Because he does it, because his plain kind of one note and anti-charismatic style, where he just sort of says the same thing over and over again about corporations and the 1% and all that. It just turns it upside down, and it undermines his personal appeal, and it makes it expressly about the policy, which for people who are wary, at least they claim to be wary of, attempts by politicians to use flash over substance, it sort of disarms their inherent skepticism of a politician. And then they're like, oh, maybe he's actually serious about this stuff because he doesn't have anything else. He's not skateboarding, he doesn't have the soaring rhetoric.
Right. Yeah. And he seems to not, he is not interested in developing a personality that can go in the center of the campaign, right? He just wants to put the policies in the center of the campaign. And that's really refreshing, I think, for a lot of people who grew up with the opposite kind of formulation. Politicians who had personalities and personas like Obama, in a lot of ways like O'Rourke, who are very, very vague about policies and kind of try to keep them out of the spotlight. It's more about hope and change and so forth. But you don't really know what you're getting.
We're going to go into the White House. We're going to go up to Donald Trump. We're going to say, Mr. Trump, ya yeet.
But Liz, I know we're like...
I don't even know what that means, but it's very humorous.
Again, taken for granted that we are all part of the same conspiracy. We're all part of the same hypocrisy, Ms. Brunig. And that hypocrisy is politics and, our preferred candidates. We got to tool up. We got to go to the mattresses for Bernie. So what are some things that you're looking forward to as we relitigate 2016 again in 2020? Like, what are some of the best ARGs for that we can utilize against the wretched Dem?
Well, obviously we don't want women getting into any positions of power.
Absolutely.
That was the original Bernie Sanders platform, and it's no less important now. Climate change is extremely. It's very pressing, right? So we don't have much time on it. So aggressive climate policy is more important than it has ever been before. So candidates who take that seriously, there's no good conscience picking a candidate who doesn't take it seriously or doesn't favor aggressive climate policy. It's fatal otherwise. And similarly, the economy is not super stable. A lot of people are predicting another collapse. So unless we want to go to 2008 again, with bailing out the bankers and ignoring homeowners, allowing people who are basically committing financial crimes to get away with it, and then punish the victims, you have to take a candidate who is ready to sort of go after Wall Street in a really aggressive way.
Coming out of this most recent midterm elections, where the Democrats did take back the House, but Matt Karp and others have pointed out that, like, while it's good that stopping reaction is always an important thing to do, and certainly this Republican Party, if you look at how they won back the House, like, they really did win with the the Panera-bred suburban Democratic voters who are mostly middle to upper middle class and mostly moderate to center right in their political beliefs, so that, like, the Democratic Party is moving further and further away from being a party of the working class and more a party of sort of like educated white suburbanites.
It's a political disaster to abandon the working class, and even the sort of lower income portions of the middle class. If you abandon them, someone will pick them up, and sort of already have in Trump a kind of table setting for a pseudo fascism. And so, you don't have to panic too much or predict too much, but, if you continue to move in a direction that people identify as being sort of elitist and removed from the people and anti-populist, that energy is going to go somewhere. It's already there. And so the Democrats can decide whether they want to respond to it and channel it into a movement, or whether they want to ignore it and continue with business as usual and roll the dice and see what happens. Look at what's happening to Macron in Europe right now. It's not good.
I mean, look, Macron, I think he's going to turn it around, though. In all seriousness, like, he's going to go up. He's going to, like, tell a worker to take overtime so he can buy a suit. He's going to marry some more teachers. He's going to do what he has to do. He's going to make that crazed look that looks like he's just been drinking amoeba water for 12 years. He's going to say that he's a god. He fucking, you know what? Macron filled up this space in sort of liberal culture, a void that Kanye left, because he's sort of like Yeezus era Kanye.
Yeah,
I am a god. He's a god.
He is. He's a god on earth. He's going to start giving all of his speeches from behind a curtain, just his outline and maybe his bejeweled hand will come out to wave to the crowd.
You know what Macron is like? You know how we always make fun of the guys who are like, they watch The Sopranos or whatever, and they're like, this is about cool guys. Macron watched Gladiator, and he looked at Joaquin Phoenix's performance and was like, this is about a cool emperor who sabotaged to be like him.
If he'd only lived, he would have fixed all of Rome's problems.
But I mean, obviously, whether these protests are, right-wingers mad about an environmental tax or whether they're generally anti-austerity, I mean, probably a little of both is true there. But I just want to read this one Twitter exchange between someone and, Neera Tanden, as long as we're talking about her. The person who, let's be honest, is like the biggest hurdle to the Bernie conspiracy. You're gonna have to deal with Neera
it's
eventually.
Tough, man. She just keeps figuring out all of our moves. She's one step ahead.
Her posting is too strong. So, and I want to talk about some of her posts, and I just want to talk about this interaction that she had with someone on Twitter. Someone's responding to her, and they say, because Macron cut taxes for the wealthy and now he's trying to force more austerity on workers, carbon taxes passed on to consumers are a poor way to pursue environmental policy. Go after the super rich oil producers who are sitting on billions in oil wealth already. Be fair. To which Neera responds, in theory, a carbon tax does both. The person responds to her, not in practice, however, because the oil producers will simply pass along the added expense until it hits the consumers, who are already paying through the nose for energy. The French should follow the hashtag Superfund model, where historical polluters are held financially responsible. And Neera responds, no, the theory is that people consume less energy-intensive products, lowering the sales and ultimately profitability of those companies. Can you identify anything wrong with this line of reasoning, Liz?
I mean, the left theory is that climate change, aggressive climate change policy has to be a lot more comprehensive than just a carbon tax, right? That part of the problem is that when you leave these companies alone and instead target consumers to try to get them to stop, paying the companies, basically, the companies are still using their huge amounts of wealth to influence policy. Example, to lobby against infrastructural changes that would allow people to use public transport or green forms of transport, and to lobby against investment and innovation in green infrastructure. And so if you're ignoring the companies and you don't absolutely aggressively go after them in their profit margins, you're going to allow them to keep doing that. And so the crunch is just going to get harder and harder on working people who, of course, because they still have to get to work, are going to complain to manufacturers because there's nothing they can do from their level. There's only something that can be done from the political level. So this is the progressive argument for an extremely comprehensive, aggressive climate policy that targets the manufacturers and producers of dirty energy, which Neerav should know. The idea that the left is less comprehensive is disturbing.
Well, no, I mean, it just seems to me that like the idea that CAP basically exists to perpetrate, and like whether it's Beto or Kamala, or why I'm deeply skeptical of almost every Democratic politician or 2020 hopeful, is that they all see these problems like climate change or energy consumption or healthcare or whatever, and the solutions for all of them involve individual choices in the marketplace. It's like that, right. Like that can never ever be touched or dealt with. Like the state can never actually take action to impose, a change in our economy or a change in something. It always has to be individuals making choices in a market. Like they're there to protect the market. Like, and that's really what neoliberalism means.
Right. It's like, God forbid that there be any interference on the political level with these incredibly political organizations we know as corporations. Right. Their power is untouchable. And, neoliberalism, the corporation, the capital is in control of the politics. That's just the fact of it. Because they can't interfere in the markets, they don't want to interfere in the markets, or they want to totally minimize how politics can interfere in markets. It means that the political powers that be are actually beholden to the hegemony of capital. And that's just capitalism. That's what it is.
They're so captured by that ideology that it's reflected in their really cretinous lack of understanding of politics. When they lose, they just don't know what to do. I mean, we're seeing them flail around, and all they can think is, well, what if we just, got a white Obama? Because they can't think in any other terms, because they can't imagine why people vote other than, well, Democrats are good people, and so they vote for Democrats, and Republicans are bad people, and so they vote for Republicans. Like something like a carbon tax to them, well, yeah, sure, it's going to cost you more, and it's going to make your life harder, and you're already at the whims of the market, and your wages are flat, and you can't afford a bunch of stuff, and you have incredible debt because everything has really been put on your shoulders, and the safety net's been destroyed. But you should be okay paying a carbon tax because that's going to help the environment, and it makes you a good person for doing it. And so when people say, no, fuck you, you're not going to put another thing on top of me. Meanwhile, I could see you using policy, tax policy and regulatory policies to enrich the richest people right in front of my face and just take that. I'm not going to take it. And their heads just start sparking. They're like, no, that's good. You're a good person, right? And then if you say, no, fuck you, they're like, well, you're bad then. You're a bad person. Oh, well, I guess we're just going to have a few more fucking Beyonce concerts.
Not only
maybe
that,
we'll get a few young people to decide to be good because of literal virtue signaling in mass media.
Not only that, it's like, the fact that they don't support this or they're reacting badly about having to pay extra for gas or whatever means you're a bad person. Not only that, trying to design policies or a political program that would appeal to these people who are frustrated and angry is also bad because that means that you're catering to the bad people.
Exactly.
And they, like it's this moral vision that trying to design policies to make the lives of the bad people less miserable or hard makes you a bad person.
Exactly.
As well.
They need to be punished. That's why these people start frothing at the mouth every time Bernie says something about rural people. They hear rural and they just imagine fucking just Klansmen and the kid on the porch in Deliverance, and they're just like, oh, those are bad people. Why would you want to make their lives any better? You should be fucking dropping depleted uranium on them, those motherfuckers. You should be turning them into the guys from The Hills Have Eyes. And it's like, well, why do we lose? It's weird.
It's been one of the complaints about the protests in France, right? That some of the protesters are on the right. And so neoliberals will say like, oh, well, it's sort of a red-brown alliance. It's really fascists in the street, and then the leftists are helping them. It's like, well, one way that you could diffuse this is to respond to the substance of the protest.
Yeah.
Right? The left is right here for you to ally with. We're certainly more similar, but they don't want to do that.
Well, I think France actually is an interesting example because, coming up hot on the heels of Macron is, of course, the Front National and the actual populist, fascist right in France, which got very close to, 30% of the vote. But almost right behind their heels was Mélenchon, who's an actual communist, right? So the argument is now that, if you're a liberal or one of the good people, then any criticism you're doing of Macron is de facto support for fascism and the right. If you're dissatisfied with him or pointing out that he actually is a grotesque, just a grotesque figure and a parody of everything that people hate about government and, neoliberal politics, then that's a de facto support for fascism. Where it's like, if you are the liberal centrist, you could always just ally with the left if you're interested in defeating the right. But, I mean, this is a tale as old as time, right? If it really comes down to it, if, let's say, the general election was not between Macron and Le Pen, but Macron and Mélenchon, or no, Le Pen and Mélenchon, how many of these same people would have been being like, you know what? As much as we don't like it, the responsible vote actually is for the fascists.
Oh, absolutely. And get ready for it. If Bernie does get the nomination, Bernie is well to the right of Mélenchon. You're going to see a lot of respectable opinion that has spent 4 years horrified at Trump slowly rationalize supporting him, holding their nose, of course. But
or maybe not. I think a lot of these people, they won't outright say vote for Trump because they've gone too far into he's the most evil president of all time. But they are, after hectoring everyone else, they're probably going to try to vote third party or not vote.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the thing. There might be a Bloomberg type thing. And then all these people who spent their entire lives throwing darts at a fucking Nader
or Jill Stein or whatever. Yeah.
They have Jill Stein fucking voodoo dolls. All of a sudden voting for manlet Bloomberg is all of a sudden my conscience requires me to do this. I'm sorry, I can't vote for Bernie.
I think that 2020 is, if Bernie gets anywhere near the nomination, there's going to be a lot of corporate money looking for a place to go, and you'll probably get an extremely stupid third party candidate like Bloomberg.
Oh, it's going to rule.
Well, we're all looking forward to it, and we love to see it. And Liz, again, you have your orders from conspiracy headquarters. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep taking down. Just line them up, shoot them down. Beto
All right,
O'Rourke,
Roger, copy that.
Kamala. Roger, you were greenlit for Xville. Liz Brunig of the Washington Post. Thank you once again for joining us and our conspiracy.
Thanks so much for having me on.